So, hello, we are started now.
Okay, we started.
Thank you again for finding the time and inviting me again into your house, which looks a bit like a greenhouse from the perspective we look at it at this moment. So, please tell a bit about yourself so that people know who you are, and then I will start with the 5 questions.
Well, it's always difficult to define ourselves because we are always changing. But I would say that I am an explorer. I enjoy adapting, and I think adapting is something that we all kind of should enjoy in life. And I've been doing quite a few things, and for some reason, always different from the experience I had before. But if I can enumerate the ones that are more significant, I'm Brazilian born, and I went to England in to study quite in very early age, and got stuck there and spent 15 years there. So I kind of changed the way I was, and then after these 15 crazy years, you know just playing music, being a musician, and being to the pornographic industry. It was a great time. I got back to the basics. I went back to Brazil and spent there 7 years trying to do exactly the opposite, which was like to be auto or self-sustainable, doing some things in a completely different manner uh, from what the West teaches us, which was very interesting that time. And so in trying to develop that system where we could use the least resources, and then after that experience, which was really rewarding, very very amazing, I start traveling again, then start exploring Asia. When traveling in India, for example, literally lost, because in India is a place to lose yourself, and is a great, great place to really start from the scratch. I met my wife, who's Swedish, and we end up moving to Sweden. So I would kind of say that these 4 different stages, very different from each other, made me be what I am. From like a Western person at the beginning, like living in a corporate system, crazy, then self-sustainable, then traveling again, and now back to the West.
Back, but different.
But different, thinking different with all that experiences, and trying not to change the world, but trying to change again in every time the way I see things.
Yeah, very curious geography, and I like what you said about adapting.
Adapting, yes.
Was the reason why you could travel in all these places, find yourself.
Absolutely.
First question I will ask you is, what is a city for you?
Well, first of all, like living in big cities such as São Paulo, where I'm come from, is a city of like 20 million people. It's quite interesting, but in a sense quite unorganized, although São Paulo is very westernized and very metropolitan. Then living, for a long time in another big city, not in number, but in terms of development. London, for a long time, brought me another insight on how a city should be. And then while traveling, I went to many big cities, but I would mention one specific one that had characteristics that I think the big ones just missed, which was a small city in the southeast side of India called Auroville, a self-sustainable city. And I think that's what the big cities missed. So a city for me would be a mix of these two, like these huge gatherings of people doing whatever, activities they choose, but thinking of being self-sustainable, we lost this, I guess. And so a city for me would be a place where we could develop our activities in a self-sustainable way.
I'll share part of your living room, which consists of all the vegetables they can think of and everything growing. So I think you are trying to really live with what you say, but we'll come to that.
Mimetize, yeah. Yeah, we're living, in the heart of Sweden. I mean, not really in the heart of Sweden. We are not really in the Stockholm area. We are in the north side, a bit of a suburb, but we have a wonderful garden. And my wife tries to bring a little bit of this countryside experience that she had while small. And we have a small daughter, 4 years old, so we want her to have this experience, being able to, during the summer, we're talking about summer in Sweden,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
When she goes, it was one of the most delightful views I had with my daughter. It's like enjoying her to go like from our living room to the garden outside, and she just look at that beautiful cucumbers and tomatoes, and she was just picking from the plants and just yum, eating them like unwashed and enjoying herself. So wow, great! I think it's a great thing. Might be doesn't mean much for people, but I think this is part of self sustainability. Of course, we go to the supermarket and this and that, but we could try to bring this back to the ideal cities that I see, that everyone could produce a little bit inside. It's okay, we're not talking about huge production, but at least a little bit that we could exchange between ourselves, that can make this human side. For example, I can give tomatoes to my neighbors and they can give me peppers. Why not? It's okay. And very simple things that make us more human. And part of this experience that I saw in Auroville is that they had open spaces, closed spaces where gatherings were happening all the time. This is, I think, big cities should have, for me, in a way that a big city should have this. Just to answer the question, is a place where you do your things, but you gather, you do the small steps on self-sustainability, and you have this human side, which the big cities, most of them, they lost that.
So the second question is, what are you for the city?
In order to cooperate with this ideal of like improving human staying on Earth, I have a company that like specialized in events, and we deal with music because in the end of the day, I'm a musician myself. This company called Melange, we have like a world music events in Stockholm where we used to invite people from all over the world, to have music from, you imagine, just to give you an example, in 2018, when we start our activities, in a period of 3 months, we had, about 90 days, we had 36 concerts.
36 in 3 months.
In 3 months. In middle of Stockholm, in Medborgarplatsen. It was just an amazing opportunity to kind of introduce our ideas and manage these gatherings of so many different people. This is what I think is part of me in a city, is like a gathering, a catalytic point where people can meet, can exchange, can know themselves. And the idea behind the main idea behind this company Melange is this. Is like we usually had jams. Everything grew up and was born from a jam point of view, where my partner André, which you know, from Portugal, he had this in mind, that like getting people from all over, like African drummers and Swedish folk singers together in the same stage and everything. So all started from this, like a human meeting. So for a city, I would say that I am a catalyst. Music, I think, is the main gathering, not just now, but it has been from ancient times. The main gathering tool. So let's continue. It works.
Yeah,
let's continue using.
Yeah. Cool. The next question, it's a bit further from the conversation we were having just now. It's about artificial lighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to ask you, following from the work I have been doing before on artificial lighting and how it impacts me, I'm asking different people now, how does artificial lighting, remember winter in Sweden, now it's very different.
Yes.
Or don't remember it, but whatever. So how does artificial lighting impact your mood, behavior when you walk in the city, in the streets?
It is very interesting subject because we got so used to artificial lighting. I would like to mention one thing. After meeting my wife in India, she went to Brazil to visit me there in my home place. And one of the things that really called my attention was the impact of light that I was in, that she commented. It was so amazing to look at that, because I took for granted. Because I used to live, I built my house when I went back to Brazil in 2004. I built my house in the middle of a forest. Basically, my nearest neighbor was 1.5 kilometers from my house. Pure forest with waterfalls and everything you imagine there, like birds eating on our like a doorstep and monkeys, everything. Pure forest. And but there was one thing that really was interesting about light, that she asked me a question, and that made me think. She said, why don't you use much light during the evenings? Like I said, why everything is so dark? And I didn't really pay attention to that, because during the years we had to develop a system where we kept lights outside from the house, because there are so many insects in the forest. And if you have like artificial light, white light or blue light inside the house, it can attract too many insects. So we had yellow lights around the house, pointing to the house from outside inside, where the insects could be attracted to. So it was so different. And for her, was coming from Sweden or from a Western place where we have white and blue light everywhere. It was literally black for her. It was like pitch black. She couldn't hardly walk around. And I was like, no, but there is enough light. It's so much light here, more than we need. But it really called my attention. So I think I'm back to this now, because I live in Sweden and we are flooded with, white and blue light everywhere, spectrum. We don't really use much of like yellow lights here.
I mean, different culture, different climate.
Exactly.
You don't need to protect yourself from insects so much.
Yeah. And one more thing I would add is that as a Western person, when I built my house, I built in a specific way, because I have like an architecture background. That's a study.
I missed that. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I was studying before becoming a full-time musician.
Oh, I forgot. Okay.
It's so interesting that I thought like about almost everything. I was planning a lot, and one of the things that I planned was the lights. To live in a forest is different way. And then one thing that called my attention is that when I went there, and then I even forgot about that experience, that local people, they didn't use any light in the evening.
So you were the lightest one.
I was, because I had torches. And once I had even like an experience of like someone seeing us like walking down the road with a light, and they just, for a laugh, I think was just a sort of a joke. And then later on I understood, and they said, oh, European lights on the road.
Wow.
Joking, just poking me.
Yeah.
That I didn't need that, because what light they use during the evening? The moon. enough light from the moon.
Yeah, so interesting. I'm so happy you mentioned it.
Can you imagine? Just like
yeah, we just get used to what we have, and then it feels like normal.
Absolutely. We just take for granted, but at least in that specific place, in a tropical place, I'm talking about Brazil, yes?
Of course, yes.
Tropical place, tropical forest, the amount of light that emanates from the moon is more than enough for the local. And then we come in, invade the whole. One more thing about light that might be interesting for your listeners is that through the time after building my house, more people were coming from, most of the people living in this mountainside where I built my house were coming from abroad, building there, and people from the big cities, from São Paulo and Rio. So I could see throughout these 8 years, little spotlights in the middle of the forest. Ding! A small there, a small there, small. And some of them really big. And these people with really big spotlights were people that came, the latest people coming. Because throughout time, they start diminishing lights as well. So it was a process.
We started diminishing.
Yes. The big spotlights that you could see on the hill, a neighbor he came from Italy, Mimo Mancini. so funny, man. He's amazing. But he had the strongest light in the valley. I remember that. So everyone was like, hey, Mancini, Mimo Mancini from the lights. After that, it's like a few years or a few months, I would say, it started diminishing less and less and less light.
He realized he doesn't need so much there.
Exactly.
He
adapted. You see adaptation again?
Yeah, it works there as well. Oh, beautiful. I really like that. Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this.
Yes, no problem.
I'm happy. You can tell, or maybe I should tell where we've met first, and then you'll introduce yourself. So I think the first time I saw you is when I was Facebook searching students at KTH who are doing architectural lighting design program, and then you were the first one in all of the groups. So I need to message you, and then you were my student, not tutor but peer. I was in your group, so then you were again talking to me about this course, and now you are a teaching assistant in this program. It's all coming together, and this is how I knew you. So maybe now you just introduce yourself as a person, and then I'll come to the 5 questions about the city.
All right. Well, my name is Iris Molendijk. I'm from the Netherlands, and I moved 1.5 years ago to Sweden, Stockholm, because I also wanted to study the same course as you did, so lighting design. I worked a bit before as a lighting designer in the Netherlands, and there I also studied lighting design, and my bachelor is in interior design.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All design,
yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's true. The first time that I met you was through Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
It was you have those messages, and then messages from people that you're not connected with.
Yeah.
And that was where I saw you. Mm-hmm. Oh, someone who's interested. Well, I have some time. I can answer your questions. And then I was indeed, I don't know anymore what you call it. Student ambassador, something like that.
Maybe. Mm-hmm.
And then you were on my list, so I contacted you, and now we're sitting here.
So surreal, yeah. And half of the year, like half of this master's is already gone.
Yeah, it's going so extremely fast. Yeah. No, and especially working here, it's you get so many inputs, and everything, like all the courses changed from when I did them to what's going on now.
Of course.
It's really interesting.
Let's move to the questions. It's mostly about the city and then also lighting, but because it's you who answers, it depends on you which direction you want to go. the first question is, what is a city for you?
A city for me is lots of buildings, a place where it's too busy for me, I would say. Lots of people rushing through. I feel a city is a place where time doesn't really exist in a way, because everyone has their own time schedule and everyone is rushing back and forth. And then sometimes you can find a place like a green oasis where you can stand still for a while and then just observe what is happening around you. But if I would express it visually, I would say buildings that are really high. It's hard to navigate around because there's no horizon where you can look at. Yeah, it's mainly just busy.
Yeah, that paints a good picture. I can understand that. I can see from your social media that you go on picnics and
Yes.
just into the forest and mountains quite often. Is it what you compare the city to?
Yeah, I would say that's the big difference. I grew up on the countryside, so I'm a real country girl.
Yeah.
And then Stockholm is, if you compare it with other big cities, it's so spread out and it's calm in a way.
Yeah.
But still, for me, it's too busy to really enjoy it. Or just, you can walk through it, but then I'm really happy if I'm home again, more in the outskirts of the city.
And did you live in a city in the Netherlands, or it was the countryside?
It was really the countryside, with only surrounded by fields, and I had to bike quite a distance to school. And then I did move to, for example, Amsterdam and Utrecht, but then I also lived at the outside of the city.
Yeah. And then Stockholm straight
And
away.
then Stockholm, yes.
So maybe also your impression of the city changed.
Yeah, I think so. I think if I compare how much I've been in the city center, for example, in Amsterdam, I try to avoid it. But now, when I studied and worked in the middle of the city here in Stockholm, I can't avoid it anymore. So every time I try to find new roads to walk and just try to find nice places in the city.
Yeah. But I guess with Zoom and with digital format of studying and working for you, maybe partially as well, do you think you can use that to stay where you feel more comfortable?
Yeah, I think I can definitely use Zoom because I don't have to go into the city.
Yeah.
And when I go into the city, I take more time, so I don't have to rush from A to B.
Yeah.
And I'm not part of all those people who rush around. So I always try to take a lower pace and try to enjoy what I'm seeing, and see if I can find spots that I enjoy, even though it is the middle of the city.
Yeah. And I think it's possible to do in Stockholm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's move to the second question. What are you for the city?
What am I for the city? Well, I would say I'm the slow passenger for the city.
Following from the last question. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
What
else
does it entail for you?
I think I'm the person in the city for the city that tries to appreciate what the city actually is, try to find the history of the city.
Do you think, I have an opinion on that, but do you think you influence others who live in the same city by appreciating the city?
No, I don't think so. I think I'm an individual in the city.
Okay.
And people, sometimes, I don't know if you have experienced that, but at least I've seen it a few times, that
if you're walking around and then you see something, you stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes other people look at you like, what is she looking at?
Uh-huh.
And then they look or try to look at the same spot.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they see what I see. So
Yeah, you'll never know.
exactly. So it would be interesting
Mm.
to ask, like, okay, you looked at me, but what are you actually looking at?
Yeah, that'd be interesting research. Like just to
Exactly.
stop there and then. By the way, I notice that when I take pictures of something, and if I see someone taking pictures of something, then a lot of people are looking in that direction.
Exactly.
What
Like,
is he taking picture of?
what is it?
Yeah, so I think by that you at least make them. These are the people who are passing by. Maybe slow down their pace, even if they don't see what you saw.
Yeah, maybe.
Question something, or even just notice that there is another person who is looking in another direction.
Yeah, that could be.
Mm.
That could be true. Yeah.
Which is not your aim. You're not doing it
No,
for that, but it could be a side effect.
No, exactly. I'm just doing it for me,
Yeah.
not to try to get others to look at me or what I
Yeah.
am looking at. But I think it's like how humans work.
Yeah, exactly. It's just maybe for safety we're meant to react, because if we see someone else reacting, it's safe to react as well, just in case.
Exactly.
What if there is a spider I need to be aware of? The next question, much more directed to what we do, what you do. How does artificial lighting of a night city affect you?
Of a night city. I think that Stockholm is on like the right way. They have been, or I mean, there are a lot of good lighting designers and lighting design firms here in Stockholm that have an influence on the artificial lighting design part of the city. But you can see that there's still a lot of work to do, because there's a lot of light during the nights that, in my opinion, don't have to be there. And if you walk around when it's dark, which can already be here at 3 o'clock,
Yeah.
you see, I mean, at 3 o'clock it doesn't really matter to me that there's a lot of light. But then when people go home and it's less busy, then there's still too much light that's on. And the thing that I would say bothers me most is all the lighting that is on in the buildings itself. Like whole, what is it, like workspaces, they are lit and I'm like, there's no one. I don't need to see what's in there. I need to see where I'm walking and maybe something besides that, so I understand what the space is about. But I don't need to have a look at what kind of normal office space looks like from the inside.
Yeah. I hear a lot of people saying it's curious to see what domestic places are, because they have lights on, there is a family having a dinner, and then it's interesting to have a look. But office, it's something completely different.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I really like, especially now with Christmas, that all the like normal domestic houses have those triangle candles.
Yeah.
And that makes a city feel cozy when it's dark, and makes you curious in a way that you want to sneak in, or at least I do, maybe because of my interior design background, that I want to see how their houses are decorated. And,
good excuse.
Exactly. Yeah, but then, and if you look at the artificial light that is used in public spaces and on the streets, I think there are quite good solutions, but there are also a lot of bad solutions that can be improved.
Do you think you've noticed any direct influence on you? Maybe you can compare different cities you've lived in as well.
Yeah, if I would compare it with Utrecht and Amsterdam, where I lived, I think they are far behind with the types of lighting they use. Because here in Stockholm you see quite a lot of LEDs that have been used, but in those cities, well, at least the streets where I have been in, it felt like it's much, they don't use LEDs, and think here in Stockholm they are trying to use lighting where people feel comfortable in, and in the other cities, in my opinion, it's more that they just lit the things they want to lit or want to light, and then that's it. And here I feel it's more they combining it, so they want to create light for people to feel comfortable in, but also to make them see where they're going. And I think that's or at least that's what I feel, where I feel more comfortable in. And it's, you get the idea that people take care of the citizens in a way, because they spend they spend attention to the surrounding, and maybe also because Stockholm is much spread out, so the streets are bigger, so you need another approach to it than the small streets in Amsterdam and Utrecht.
Interesting that you notice that and mention it. Maybe I could imagine, for example, someone could feel comfortable with this another approach that they have in Utrecht.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But for you, it's this way.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that, even though when I was in Amsterdam and in Utrecht for one day, I really liked it, but it was during the summer, so I wasn't there during the nighttime. And in Amsterdam, I feel it was some time ago, so I didn't think about lights. So I cannot make any comparisons. So interesting that you say that.
Yeah. No, but and I think the lighting solution that they use, for example, in Utrecht also wouldn't work here in Stockholm, because you have lots of those canals in Utrecht. So I think it's depending on the city and the lights they use.